Easy homemade mozzarella. Combine a half a cup of cold water and 1.5 teaspoons of citric acid in a small mixing bowl. Stir until the water has somewhat cleared and the citric acid doesn't settle to the bottom of the bowl. In a 5-quart pot, you're going to pour an entire gallon of cold milk. And then stir the cold milk with a whisk or a slotted spoon. The goal is to create a current to help circulate the citric acid mixture. So continue to stir and stir for like 10 to 15 seconds. Now you want to make sure that your pot is at least 5 quarts because a gallon is 4 quarts and you need to add in the 3/4 cups of water with the citric acid and the rennet, plus space to stir. Sometimes you will have a little overflow if you're not stirring carefully. It happens. Cook over medium-low heat. You're going to stir periodically and check the temperature of the milk using an instant read thermometer until the temperature reaches 90 degrees. This could take about 5 to 8 minutes depending on whether you have an electric or a gas stove. Gas stoves heat things up quicker, so you're more in the 5-minute range. Meanwhile, in a small mixing bowl, combine a 1/4 cup of water with a 1/4 teaspoon of liquid rennet. You can use animal rennet or vegetable rennet. The result remains the same, but it's something you should keep in mind if you're going to be serving this cheese to vegetarians. Continue periodically stirring your milk. You want to make sure that you're heating the milk evenly and not just scorching the bottom, so stirring periodically is important. Check the temperature. Once the milk has reached 90 degrees, you're going to stir in the water and rennet mixture using a whisk or a slotted spoon. You want to stir continuously for 30 seconds. You don't want to stir much longer than that because you want to avoid breaking up the already forming curds. Otherwise, you will end up with these rice-sized curds. So by stirring just the right amount of time, and I hate to say it, but it's true, you will form one large milk curd. So there is a science to this. I've tried 25 seconds and I've tried longer. 30 seconds is the sweet spot. So after stirring, remove the pot from the burner and cover it with the lid. Set it aside and set the timer for 10 minutes. Once the 10 minutes are up, uncover the lid. You should see a thin line of clear liquid encircling the single large milk curd from the pot. If you don't see this, replace the lid and leave it for another minute or 2. Using a chef's knife, you're going to cut 5 to 6 strips going from top to bottom. You want to do this carefully because you don't want to break up the curds, and also you don't want to scratch the bottom of your pot. Now when you're done cutting from top to bottom, you're going to go from side to side. Same thing, 5 to 6 strips. If it turns, which it might, one thing I do is I just stop my knife flush, and that kind of helps stop the swirling, which could break up the curds into smaller curds, which you don't want. Now after you do this, you're going to heat the curds up to 105 degrees. Now at this time when we heat, we're not going to stir because again, we don't want to break up the curds. So you're just going to check the temperature periodically. Once it reaches 105, you're going to set it aside for 5 minutes. And after the 5 minutes, you're going to use a slotted spoon or your hands because the water is just warm. You're going to remove the milk curds from the liquid whey and place it into a colander that you put inside of another larger pot. You want to make sure that you get all the curds out. And the reason why I'm not pouring this pot into a colander into another pot is because you want to reserve the liquid whey in the pot because we're going to heat it back up and we're going to season it. So at this point, we're removing the curds. And once I do that, I'm going to lift the colander and just kind of swirl it around, get rid of any remaining excess liquid before squeezing it with my hands. At this point, I'm trying to remove as much of the liquid as possible while creating one solid formed curd. You don't have to remove every drop, but as much as you can. After doing that, you're going to set it aside and go back to the remaining whey in the pot. You're going to raise that temperature back up to medium heat and add in 1 tablespoon of kosher salt. Again, stirring periodically and checking the temperature with the instant read thermometer. Repeating much of the same process as we did in the beginning. Now, once the temperature reaches 180 degrees, you're going to add the mozzarella curd to a medium-sized mixing bowl, and you're going to cover it with the hot whey. Now, you might be wondering, exactly how hot is this whey? Well, American coffee from your regular standard cafe is about 190 to 205 degrees, so it's pretty hot. However, I find that the standard latex gloves that we all bought during COVID are sufficient enough to protect my hands from the heat. If it still feels a little too hot for you, then I suggest using those thick, like rubber kitchen gloves. Now, after letting the mozzarella sit in the hot whey for about 20 to 30 seconds, you're going to lift the mozzarella by one side. You want it to be pliable. Allow the weight of the mozzarella to pull itself down naturally, and then fold the mozzarella in half. If it still feels stiff, you can put it back in the hot whey and let it sit for another 10-15 seconds more, or you can add more hot liquid to the bowl. Continue pulling and folding until it looks shiny and smooth. Now, with the mozzarella folded in half, you want to use your thumbs to pull the top of the mozzarella out and down, and then use your remaining fingers to tuck the mozzarella back underneath and up into itself. So out and over, under and up. Continue this method of pulling until the mozzarella is shiny and tight. Then you're going to pinch the bottom of the mozzarella closed. You can place it back into another bowl and cover with room temperature whey and leave it on the counter if you're going to use it the same day. You want to use it within a couple hours. Otherwise, you can cover it in an airtight container with the liquid whey, or you can wrap it tightly in plastic wrap. I envelop the mozzarella completely with plastic wrap, and then I twist the sides, making sure that it is airtight. And then, just like tying your shoes, I fold it over 2 times and then just one last time just to hold it secure. That's how my favorite delicatessen does it. And if it's good enough for them, it's good enough for me. Anyway, once it gets nice and cold, it'll hold its shape, and that'll be the mold. Now, what do you do with the remaining whey? Well, you can bottle it up. That's right. Don't throw away that liquid gold. You can use it to substitute water in any recipe. It adds additional protein and vitamins without wasting anything. I'm sure you've heard of whey protein as an addition at your smoothie shop. This is it. You can store it in your fridge for up to a week or your freezer for up to 6 months. You can find this recipe on domesticgourmet.com. Buen provecho.